You wake up before the sun does. Not because of an alarm, there is no alarm, but because your body has never known anything except the rhythm of light and dark. Your stomach is already aching. It has been aching since yesterday afternoon, and it will keep aching until you find something, anything, to put into it. You rise from a nest of leaves and grass pressed into the earth. And the first thing you do, before you walk, before you speak, before you even fully open your eyes, is start chewing on something you tucked away the night before. A root, hard, fibrous, slightly bitter. You'll be chewing it, or something like it, for the next several hours. Now think about your morning. You reach into a fridge. You peel back plastic. Maybe you microwave something for 90 seconds. In the time it takes you to make coffee, a person 2 million years ago hasn't even found breakfast yet. So here's the question that should stop you in your tracks. How did our ancestors eat? Really eat, day after day, for millions of years, before anyone had ever struck a spark on purpose? Before there was a fire pit, a pot, a flame of any kind? What does it even mean to survive on raw food, alone, in the wild, with nothing but your hands, your teeth, and maybe a sharp rock? The answer is stranger, harder, and more fascinating than most people imagine. Let's start with the evidence, because this isn't guesswork. It's written into bones, teeth, and stone. At Olduvai Gorge in Tanzania, at a site called FLK Zinj, archaeologists uncovered animal bones dated to roughly 1.8 to 2 million years ago, scarred with cut marks from stone tools alongside carnivore tooth marks. That layering tells a story. Early humans, likely Homo habilis, were accessing meat, sometimes by hunting, more often by scavenging carcasses left by lions and hyenas, and doing it with tools. Those tools, known as Oldowan tools, are some of the oldest deliberately shaped stone implements ever found, dating back roughly 2.6 million years. Simple, sharp-edged flakes struck off a stone core. Nothing fancy. But revolutionary, because a flake like that could do something teeth alone could not. Slice through hide, scrape flesh from bone, and crack open a skull to reach the marrow and brain tissue inside, some of the richest, fattiest, most calorie-dense food available anywhere on the savannah. Harvard primatologist Richard Wrangham, in his research and his influential book, Catching Fire: How Cooking Made Us Human, 2009, makes a case that should reframe how you think about eating altogether. Wrangham and his colleagues ran experiments comparing the effort required to chew raw versus cooked food. Their conclusion: chewing raw meat and fibrous plants efficiently enough to extract adequate calories would have required our ancestors to spend roughly 5 to 6 hours a day just chewing. Not preparing food, not gathering it, chewing it. A 2016 study led by Zink and Zink Lieberman, published in Nature, tested this directly, having participants chew raw goat meat and raw vegetables, then measuring the effort involved. Raw meat took far more chewing cycles and force to break down than cooked meat, and raw starchy vegetables like yams and beets were even harder to process. The takeaway: without cooking, our ancestors' jaws were doing punishing, near-constant work. There's more. Anthropologist Amanda Henry has analyzed dental calculus, the hardened plaque preserved on ancient teeth, from Neanderthal remains, finding microscopic starch granules from tubers, root, and even cooked grains in some later samples. Earlier hominins show similar evidence of a heavily plant-based, fibrous diet, supplemented by whatever meat, marrow, insects, and eggs they could find. This wasn't a diet of steaks and salads. It was a diet of toughness, literally. So let's walk through what an actual day looked like. It's dawn, roughly 2 million years ago, somewhere on the East African savanna. You are small, maybe 5 feet tall, powerfully built through the arms and jaw, with a brain about a third the size of a modern human's. You wake hungry because you went to sleep hungry, because that was simply the baseline condition of existence. The group stirs together, a dozen or so individuals, related by blood or long familiarity, because survival alone out here is essentially a death sentence. By first light, the group splits by task, a pattern anthropologists have observed in surviving forager societies like the Hadza of Tanzania, whose foraging patterns offer a living window into ancient subsistence strategies. Women and children fan out to dig for tubers and roots, using sharpened sticks, scanning the ground for the telltale wilted leaves that mark an edible root below. This is not quick work. A single tuber might take 20 minutes of digging through hard-packed earth to unearth, and it will still need to be pounded against a rock to soften its fibers before it's remotely chewable. Meanwhile, some of the men range farther, watching the sky. Vulture circling means a carcass. That's the signal. Not a spear-thrown hunt like you might imagine. Most early scavenging meant racing, cautiously, toward a lion's leftover kill, moving fast enough to strip meat and crack bones for marrow before the original predators or a pack of hyenas came back for their share. This was high-stakes, adrenaline-soaked work. Get there too early, and the lions are still on the carcass. Get there too late, and there's nothing left but bone shards. By mid-morning, the group tends to gather again in shaded, safer ground, because standing exposed on open savanna at midday, when the sun is highest and predators are often resting, is a good way to die. This is when the real labor of eating begins, pounding roots against stones to break down their fibrous structure, tearing raw meat into strips small enough to chew, cracking long bones open on a rock anvil to get at the marrow inside, using a stone flake as a wedge and another stone as a hammer. That marrow was gold, dense in fat, calories, and nutrients that raw plant matter alone could never fully provide. Some researchers, including paleoanthropologist Henry Bunn, have argued that marrow and brain extraction, food inaccessible to most other scavengers, may have been a critical dietary advantage that shaped early human evolution. Then comes the chewing. Hour after hour of it, you gnaw at raw sinewy meat, working it between your molars, swallowing in small determined bites. You crunch through insects, termites, grubs, ants, which anthropological studies consistently show were a steady, underappreciated part of early hominin diets, rich in protein and fat, and, crucially, easy to gather compared to hunted meat. You eat wild fruits when in season, bitter greens, the occasional egg raided from a ground's nest. Nothing is soft, nothing dissolves easily. Your jaw muscles and the size and robustness of your molars are doing work that modern human jaws, smaller, weaker, shaped by millennia of cooked food, would genuinely struggle to replicate. By afternoon, the group is still eating, still chewing. This is one of the most striking anthropological insights buried in this story. For early humans, eating wasn't a meal. It was the day's central occupation, not something squeezed between activities. It largely was the activity. Social time, grooming, communication, even the earliest stirrings of shared culture had to happen alongside this ceaseless labor of chewing and processing food, not instead of it. There was no free time carved out after dinner, because dinner never really ended. As dusk approaches, the group moves toward safer ground for the night, often elevated terrain, dense brush, or, for some later hominins, cave shelters. Any last usable food is finished off before dark because there's no way to preserve it and no fire to guard against nocturnal predators. You lie down still chewing, jaw sore, stomach only partially satisfied, and you sleep, knowing tomorrow will begin the exact same way. This was not a brief phase. This raw food existence, with all its punishing effort, defined hominin life for well over 2 million years, the vast, overwhelming majority of our evolutionary story. And then, something changed everything. Evidence from Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, dated to roughly 1 million years ago, shows burned bone fragments and ash consistent with controlled fire use, among the oldest solid evidence we have. Sites like Gesher Beno Yaakov in Israel, dated to around 790,000 years ago, show clustered burned flint that suggests repeated, deliberate fire use at the same hearth locations over time. This was the turning point. Fire meant cooking, and cooking changed the human body itself. Cooked food is dramatically easier to digest. It denatures proteins, breaks down plant cell walls, and unlocks calories that raw food simply keeps locked away. Wrangham's research argues that this single shift, control over fire, may have freed up enormous amounts of time and energy previously spent on chewing and digesting. That energy, according to the expensive tissue hypothesis proposed by anthropologists Leslie Aiello and Peter Wheeler in 1995, could be redirected toward fueling something metabolically costly: a larger brain. Over time, our jaws grew smaller, our guts shortened, our brains expanded. The archaeological and fossil record around the emergence of Homo erectus, roughly 1.9 million years ago, shows exactly this pattern: smaller teeth, a body built for endurance, and a brain notably larger than its predecessors. Cooking didn't just change dinner, it rewired what it meant to be human. So here's where this leaves you, sitting wherever you are, maybe with a snack within arm's reach. Maybe having eaten more today already than an entire hunting scavenging band once ate in a week. Somewhere behind every convenient meal you've ever had, every soft bite you didn't have to fight for, is 2 million years of grinding, chewing, cracking, and chasing vultures across a merciless savanna just to survive one more day. We tend to think of eating as something ordinary, a pause between the real events of life. But for most of human history, it was the main event, the thing your entire existence organized itself around. And the fact that you don't have to think about it that way anymore isn't nature. It's not default. It's the outcome of a single, hard-won discovery, made by hands not so different from yours, huddled around a small flickering fire, on a night that quietly changed everything that came after. So the next time a meal takes less effort than deciding what to watch while you eat it, remember, that ease is not ancient, it's borrowed. And somewhere deep in your jaw, in muscles slightly smaller than your ancestors, in a gut slightly shorter than theirs, your body still remembers the cost of every bite.